Clever people say that it's usually good to start the presentation with asking a question to the audience. So now this time is here. Who believes in simplicity? Who of you believes that simplicity is like ultimate weapon against, inefficiency, that helps end users really run, these processes that we designed for them? Who uses simplicity as kind of tool in their daily job? Please raise your hand. Who believes in that? Be brave everyone should be brave of the simplicity. Okay, now the opposite question. Who thinks that her organization is too complicated, too complex? Raise your hand. Yeah, you're not that, you should do like this, but okay. You see, we have a paradox. If so many people is for simplicity, who creates this complexity, right? Well, I have the answer probably, because reality is complicated. We need to work a lot to make complex reality really simple for the end users. And I believe we need simple tools like this to defeat this complexity. Complexity is something that we have. We must fight against it. We need to cut it somehow. And you know what? The positive message is that I have one particular tool in mind that could help us defeat this complexity. And I'm going to present you that today. So let's start with the product presentation then. Look, in simple words, we provide a platform which is an application builder where you build your enterprise applications. It's an application builder, right? Simple words. You build mobile application, desktop class applications, as it's shown on this illustration. What is a bit unique in it is that it's based on the low-code foundation. You probably all know what low-code is. So instead of coding these applications, you simply draw them. So it's not only simpler, it's also way faster to create these applications. And what is a bit unique in our approach is that we are highly, deeply connected to ERP systems. We treat ourselves as kind of add-in to the ERP system. So you can add applications for your ERP, and also what we do is that you have this connectivity out of the box. You turn it on, and it works seamlessly with the ERP system. You don't need to take care of it. So time for a little example. Look, this is a bit simplified, but I cannot really use the pointer, but this is how the application designer looks. We have several steps. This defines the application flow, right? We have steps like this cogwheels are to connect with other systems, and users like persons' images are to interact with users. So you can represent it by some user windows in the user interface. So if you want to modify, as you probably expect, you add an arrow, you add a step, you double-click, you open a window where you create your user form. And how we do that? It's still something simple. You drag and drop different visual components. You add checkboxes, data pickers, editable fields, and drop-down lists, and so on, and you build your form. You add it to the application. Once it's added, you click one button, you publish it, and this new version is released. And what is a bit specific? This is immediately available on all the platforms. Our platform, our low-code platform, takes care of this compatibility. So you can run it on desktop computer. It will look differently than on mobile devices. It could also be used on such a specific tools like barcode scanners. So whatever we edited here in the designer that is not used by regular users would immediately look and behave like this in the mobile device. This is real behavior. Obviously, when you collect this data, you still need to connect it with the rest of the application. So I didn't show you the entire example. It's just a simplified case. But this was done, this entire behavior was done with just a few clicks. So you can imagine how you develop these apps, how you create the new versions. And one more important aspect as a part of my introduction to the product is that these are process-oriented applications. What we mean by that? That you can divide the application between two or more users by simply dividing the application workflow into swim lines. You all know what swim line is. I will not explain that. And if you do that, yeah, you divide the work between 2 or more roles, and when the process crosses the swim line, the platform will take care of the notification, so the user that takes the task over will be automatically notified that there is a new task waiting for him. Obviously, he could also find this task in his inbox, so yeah, there are multiple ways how to find the task. And when the process goes back, the same happens to the first user, and so on, so far. So, isn't it fantastic that you have this ability to create this, simple application in such a fast way for your ERP? Isn't it a great concept? I would say no, guys. Let's be honest with ourselves. Nothing special so far. It's just my intro. When you go to the exhibition area, every second booth literally shows you the same. A diagramming tool where you can create your process, you can orchestrate different applications, you can monitor. You can go there and you can see it's the same everywhere. So what's so unique in Novacura, right? How to differentiate us? Well, I started with simplicity, so this is something that I'm going to promise you somehow, simplicity, but also very practical approach. And I think we are very realistic in what we propose. And if you imagine BPM as a galaxy, to deliver something simple and pragmatical, you really need to find your niche. You find your, how you define yourself. And we define our niche in 2 dimensions. So let me firstly focus on first dimension, which is when. So which specific phase of the process improvement we support the most? Look, if you look at the typical improvement process, I have simplified it a little bit. So I divide it into 3 phases. First is as-is analysis. You need to start with problem identification. You need to measure the process, as we heard in the previous presentation. You need to somehow understand the problem. Second phase is when you know that, you design the future to-be state. And the third phase, no surprise, you finally need to implement it. Yes, you need to fight against the user. They are defend to the changes. You need to make sure that this will survive in the organization, not the day after we started new processes, but a year after maybe. How many of you, who of you thinks that the first phase is the most challenging part? Please raise your hand, but high, please. Okay, probably more or less 2-3 persons. Who thinks that designing the to-be state is the most challenging part? No one. And who thinks, I know the answer, that the third is the most challenging? Okay, you don't need to raise your hands. It's a forest of hands. No surprises here. This is my observation. I have different variants of the slide, so don't worry. Yeah, so no surprise that also Novacura would focus on that. We are pragmatical. We support companies in the most challenging part. We support you with implementing changes, not in measuring processes, not in designing new processes, no, in implementing changes. Secondly, second dimension of our niche is which processes do we support the most? Look, when you look at average company, it all starts with marketing, then there's sales, then we deliver, you produce something, you have your core operations. It might be, I don't know, invoice processing for shared services, but it's the manufacturing part in manufacturing companies. It could be, I don't know, or extraction for mines. Whatever you mean, it's core operations, then you have distributions, you have after-sale services. But there is a bunch of supporting really important services like logistics or maintenance of the assets. And obviously, a bunch of supportive, yet very important processes, administrative processes. And last but not least, a general management. So you have a house, one of the models you can draw, I mean. But look, where do we have the most potential for optimizations? Where do we achieve the most if we optimize something? We should redraw this picture. These are the core processes that accumulate, that generate the most costs, and where you spend the most of your resources, like human resources, machines, machinery, everything, suppliers. So, again, no surprise, our focus would be to help you in these processes, because if you touch a little thing here, the leverage will be huge. It will have a huge impact on the entire organization because these processes are the most fragile, the most important in your company. So to sum it up, just a little intro, we support companies in implementing changes and we support companies in the mainstream processes. So how do we take this first thing? Look, let's start. We have the to-be vision, and now we have basically 3 methods to implement changes in processes. First is like organizational changes. We write new procedures, we send emails to people, we establish new folders in a network, we establish new Excel files and Word templates, and we let people work. But obviously we can't control it. It's far from being efficient. How can you be efficient with a paper formula and so on, so on? So it's not perfect. And basically, users are not guided by these tools, right? Excel will not guide person to when filling it in. So we need a new system that has everything that we dream about, right? But it's expensive. You need hundreds of acceptances, including IT division, finance division, and you will do a revolution in a company. But sure, this might work, but costs as hell, and it's so expensive, and it takes time. So the middle option looks like a low-hanging fruit, right? We have specific software. We have the software in a company. Almost every big company has an ERP system. Why not to use it? It's a system, so why not to modify it? Well, because it's really hard to modify it, right? Try to modify your ERP system. It takes a long time, and what you achieve at the end is far from being perfect. It looks like a workaround. And by the way, ERP systems are usually not designed in a way that guides users with the step-by-step approach, right? They have a big screen with hundreds of fields, and they must fill it in. They must know how to operate. But we still believe it's a great starting point for optimization. Therefore, our tool is designed to work as a kind of envelope on the ERP system that opens it for modifications, gives this flexibility, and gives this process layer that will guide users with the step-by-step approach through everything that exists in the ERP system. And it will be done in a very good way, because we also offer a very simple user interface, which has a huge impact on the efficiency of the end users working on a daily basis. So let me show you a quick example of that. This is a typical situation. You have a user, let it be the procurement person, who reviews a purchase order in the ERP system. So he reads some data from the ERP, it's presented on the ERP screen. Now, he must consult the information he sees with multiple persons because he doesn't know how to attribute it, he doesn't know if he has budget for that, so on and so on. And if he finally connects the information, he writes it to the ERP. So ERP is just to store the final state, where real processes exist outside of the system. They are not controlled by that. Well, the same situation with Novacura. It will be very symbolic. You have the swim lines, and the last one is ERP system, yeah, and above we have roles for multiple people in Novacura Flow. So let's start with the procurement assistant. Application reads some data from ERP, that's the core starting point, and presents it in Novacura interface to the user. So he could review it, he could add additional info, and if he thinks or she it's right, he passes it over to another person who might be a higher specialist. So he reviews it, he adds some information on rejects, and he passes it over to the manager. And the manager could reject it, no surprise, it's the favorite option, or approve, and it comes back to the primary user who adds some additional steps, and finally Novacura Flow writes the information to the ERP. Compare it with the previous situation. Now we have a full control over this process because it exists in application. And this application divides the work that usually is done in ERP between users. So one user sees only this information that is important for him at particular process stage. So we control it. But you know what? This tool is not just designed to reflect existing processes. This is the optimization tool. So why not to change this process with just few clicks? This is a trivial example, but look, we added a gate here, and it checks the amount of the purchase order. If it's below 1,000 euros, I wanted to say million euros, 1,000 euros, then it doesn't go to the manager for the approval. We don't want to disturb him with such a low, expenses. So it only goes to the second level specialist. It doesn't disturb the manager. So we can implement these small little changes that really matter in a massive scale with a few clicks, still operating in the ERP system. But now users operate in Novacura instead of directly in the ERP system. You might ask the question, isn't it really complicated to operate to access the ERP, to integrate with that? Normally, yes. But this is our core. This is symbolic animation. But believe me, we have dedicated connectors to the most popular ERP systems that do their job, and you don't really need to think about all the technical aspects of the integration. Security, efficiency, connection pooling, all this stuff, get rid of that. You simply turn the connectivity on, and you have access to all the ERP data, and you can modify the data. Moreover, we deliver, and we are still developing it, the marketplace of applications. You can treat these as great examples on how to operate with ERP. You just take one application, and you modify it as you need, because it clearly shows you how to read specific data from the ERP, how to write it back, and so on. So you have a great starting point to build your own ecosystem of applications around the ERP. Which ERPs? You have the names. Come to the booth. I will not concentrate on that. If you have one of these systems, you probably recognize the logo, so let's move forward. And one last, I promise you, last element of my presentation is that we also have something very unique, which is called deep ERP integration. To exemplify it, I have this example. There is a technician or a warehouse man that will use Novacura Flow application, and there is a regular ERP user that uses regular ERP. Look, if the technician starts using Novacura, it immediately stores information in the ERP database. So we don't collect our own information. Everything we do, it's done directly in the ERP. All the necessary information is there. So the person who uses ERP sees all the results, collects all the data. He can monitor the process on the regular basis because he sees the progress. You know, normally when you have mobile application or any other application, it operates locally on a local database and only synchronizes information, a portion of information, from time to time. What we do, we constantly update ERP systems. So they have an online information, and they have all the necessary detail. Imagine, they can report all the information directly in the ERP or in the BI system because we don't own any data. We share every data we have with the ERP system immediately. As a consequence of that, look, when you create your first tiny little application in Novacura Flow, it doesn't have an impact on the rest of the company. You simply add something in one department for one person, for a few persons, one functionality, but the rest of the company will not see any changes. You don't even need to inform them because they will see their ERP world as they had in the past. With one difference, that maybe the data quality will be better because it's collected via app, it's controlled by the app. Maybe the information is collected more frequently because we don't redraw something from a paper, we collect it on the fly. But they will not see the difference. So you can harmlessly add more and more applications without disrupting other processes surrounding the ERP. You know, the other users will be migrated from the state where they only use the ERP towards Novacura on the continuous, as a part of the continuous process. Yeah? So you can continuously improve your processes and add more and more features and more applications without ruining existing processes. You don't even need to communicate to these people about these changes because they will still see the same in their ERP system. That's the core of the concept. And you know what? After a year of implementation, your ERP will be surrounded, believe me, with dozens of applications. So you will, and this is the thesis of this presentation, you will convert the ERP to be an epicenter of changes. It will still be there, surrounded by these apps that gives this flexibility, but ERP will still be there as the central point. So that's the core explanation, but I earlier promised you that we have our two niches. So second niche is specific mainstream processes. I promised you this part will be way faster, way simpler to explain. Just a few examples on how we support the mainstream processes in customers' organizations. So, firstly, these tiny little applications are not that tiny and not that little. It could offer very complex business logic. It could offer very not complicated, but very advanced user interface, like production scheduling. So yeah, we have a lot of features here. One of these is, for instance, very important for some businesses and core processes like logistics or manufacturing. We have ability to scan barcodes from any editable field in the application. As the application designer, if you want to improve warehouse processes, you don't need to define that this field should be read from the barcode. No, every single field, even on your iPhone, could be entered by a keyboard or scanned. Talking about barcodes, we have a support for labeling system, so you are not only able to scan barcodes, but we can generate the labels, we can print it, we can manage the information. We can integrate with RFID gates, and it's directly available from this diagramming tool. You just select information from the RFID, and you have it in your application. Next is the offline mode, especially important in some businesses like field services. You have inspections, pipeline inspections, and there is no connectivity. And how to operate? Well, with the offline mode, you can collect information, you can manipulate it, and it will be synchronized when the connection is established again. One more example. Again, some industries, I don't know, construction, logistic delivery, they need this physical signature still, right? It's not something magic. You simply drag and drop signature component to your application, it's there. You don't need to code it. It's done. It's by default. Yeah, GPS location. This is important. In some businesses, imagine industrial scale, and you put something on it, like a delivery, and you want to check the weight. And you can read this information from this industrial scale wirelessly. You don't need to retype it. You have a control of the process. You can read different measurers and read the information and process it fully automatically with this application. And last and ultimate example, look, here we connected our software with computer vision and artificial intelligence that detects objects on the shop floor. It's a conveyor belt. We are mimicking it. And it recognizes if the part is broken or not and sends this information to the ERP system. It could also stop the conveyor belt if it's necessary and start some, quality inspection and so on. It all depends on how you want to use this application. We just give you this ability to connect with computer vision, and then you can easily embed it in your sophisticated, in that case, low-code application. A time for summary. Once again, two niches. We support you in change implementation, and we support you in your core processes like logistics, manufacturing, procurement, supply chain, and so on, distribution. How we implement it, right? Well, you can do these applications on your own, so we train you, we offer the platform. Or we can do everything on behalf of you. You still own the platform, but we are your consultants to build these applications for you. You simply say, we want this, 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 and we do that for you. But you know what? The most common and efficient way to develop these apps is the following. It's a mixed model, where we do bigger changes, we implement bigger applications like new areas, new solutions, and then we hand it over to you, to customers, and customers develop smaller changes, like they do the continuous improvement, so they can react really quickly and add these small little changes to these applications on a daily basis. And think of it as we still talk about ERP systems in the background. So you would be able to modify your ERP or whatever core system you have in your organization in such a very flexible way. You can really add 10 new features to your applications each day and publish to users to all multiple devices. It's hard to explain it in 30 minutes, I know. So we have our booth, and please come visit our booth and maybe listen to the examples that we prepared for how we optimize specific processes in some industries. So we are prepared to talk a lot about it. Thank you for your time. And yeah, if you have questions, then if we only have time, I don't know.
Yeah, yes, we will have time. Thank you very much. Big applause. Thank you. What was very interesting, well prepared. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience?
So Novacura already exists since 20 years on the market. We already exist since 4 years in the German market. We have customers like Maxon, for example, from Switzerland, which is a German-speaking market actually. What can you say? What is like most convenient for German-speaking market at the moment?
Depending if you ask about the solution scope or if you ask about how we deliver services. Regarding services scope, we mainly focus on manufacturing companies. Also, there are different areas in manufacturing. You can produce electronic devices, cars, or I don't know.